I'm 56. I've quietly stepped back from almost everyone, and it is the most honest thing I have ever done. Not out of bitterness, not out of pain, but because somewhere between raising children, burying parents, and watching life move faster than I expected, I finally understood something nobody warns you about. Most of the connections we exhaust ourselves maintaining were never truly mutual. I used to be the one people called at midnight, the one who always showed up, the one who gave and gave until there was nothing left to give. And the moment I gently stopped, most of those people simply moved on. That should have hurt. Instead, it clarified everything. This isn't about loneliness. It's about what's possible when you finally stop performing for an audience that was never really watching. If something in you is quietly shifting, if you feel less need to explain yourself, less hunger to be understood, you are not losing yourself. You are finally finding yourself. I used to love talking. A random conversation at the grocery store could turn into 20 minutes about someone's grandkids, their health problems. I'd leave with their entire life story, and they'd leave feeling like someone actually listened. And I did listen. I wasn't faking it. But somewhere around my mid-40s, I started noticing something. After these conversations, I felt empty, not sad, empty. Like I'd given something that wasn't replenished. The people I talked to moved on. They saw me again next week and didn't remember half of what they told me, because it didn't matter to them. It was just noise they needed to release. I realized I was collecting other people's problems like they were my responsibility. A friend calls crying about her marriage, suddenly I'm the therapist. A coworker mentions he's struggling, now I'm his counselor. A family member has a crisis, I'm the one who fixes it. And nobody ever asked me how I was doing. That's not connection. That's servitude dressed up as friendship. Here's what they don't tell you about constant availability. It kills you. Slowly. In ways you don't notice until you're already broken. By my early 50s, I was waking up exhausted, not physically tired, mentally drained, because I'd spent the previous day managing other people's emotions, responding to messages, being on call for their crises. My own life felt like it was happening, in the margins. The exhaustion isn't just about time, it's about emotional labor. Every conversation costs you something. Every text that demands a response. Every phone call that interrupts your peace. Every family gathering where you have to be on, smiling, pretending you're fine, even when you're falling apart. I'd come home from work and my wife would ask me how my day was. I wouldn't even know where to start. My day wasn't mine. It belonged to everyone else. By evening, I had nothing left to give to the person actually living in my house. That's when it hit me. I was sacrificing my intimate relationships for shallow connections with people who wouldn't think about me 5 minutes after our conversation ended. I remember the exact moment. It was a Tuesday. A woman I knew casually from the gym texted me. She was having a crisis with her teenage son. She needed advice. She needed someone to talk to. She needed me. And I looked at that message for 5 minutes, just staring at it. And I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally asked myself a question I should have asked decades earlier. Is this my responsibility? The answer was no. But here's the thing about that realization. It comes with guilt. It comes with shame. There's this voice that says you're selfish. You're cold. You're abandoning people who need you. That voice is lying. What I was actually doing was telling the truth. For the first time, I was being honest about what I could give and what I couldn't. I couldn't give any more. I had nothing left. My own cup was so empty, I couldn't even find the bottom of it. So I gave myself permission. Permission to not respond right away. Permission to let people figure things out without me. Permission to disappoint people. Permission to be selfish in the way that actually heals you. I started small. I didn't answer every text immediately. I declined dinner invitations without explaining why. I stopped calling people just to check in. I let friendships become quiet without panicking. And something unexpected happened. The people who actually mattered, they stayed. Not because I called them more, but because when I did engage, I was actually present. I wasn't performing. I was just being. The ones who disappeared, they were never really there for me anyway. When you stop talking, you start listening. Not to other people, to yourself. I grew up in a world where silence meant something was wrong. If you weren't talking, you weren't engaging. But that's just another lie we're told to keep us performing. Silence is clarity. For the first time in 30 years, I could hear my own thoughts. Not the anxiety, not the guilt. Just quiet. And in that quiet, I discovered something. I actually like myself. When you've spent your entire life being the person everyone leans on, the problem solver, the listener, you never get to know who you actually are. You only know who you are in relation to other people's needs. In the silence, I started remembering things I loved, books I wanted to read, movies that made me laugh, long mornings where I didn't have to be anywhere. I started taking walks where I didn't listen to podcasts, just walking, just being present with my own existence. My wife noticed first. She said I seemed lighter, like something heavy had been lifted. And she was right. The weight of other people's expectations finally gone. In the quiet, I realized something harder. I spent so much time talking that I never learned to really communicate. Talking is noise. Communication is truth. Truth requires stillness. It requires knowing yourself well enough to know what you actually want to say. Now, when I do speak, it matters. Here's the strange thing nobody tells you. When you stop trying to connect with everyone, your real relationships get deeper. I have fewer people in my life now, significantly fewer. But the ones who are here, they're actually here. My wife and I have conversations that feel like we're rediscovering each other. My adult daughter called me the other day, and we talked for 2 hours about something real. Not about how she's doing, but about what we actually think, what we actually feel. The paradox is that isolation and connection aren't opposites. Isolation from the noise creates the space for real connection. I lost some friendships in this transition. People who I thought were friends turned out to be acquaintances. People who needed me more than they liked me. It hurt to realize that years of showing up didn't matter, but it also freed me. Because now I know the relationships that survived are the ones worth having. I stopped talking to everyone because I finally understood. My voice didn't belong to everyone. My words are a limited resource. My attention is precious. My emotional energy is finite. And I've been distributing it to people who weren't even appreciating the gift. It's not about being unfriendly. It's about stopping the bleeding. The reason most people can't understand this is because they're still trapped in the same cycle. They're still saying yes to everything. They're still available to everyone. And they don't want to believe that you've actually escaped. Because if you escaped, that means they could escape too. And escape requires admitting that all those years of sacrifice weren't noble. They were just wasted. I'm not here to convince anyone. I'm just telling you what happened when I did. I stopped talking because I was dying inside, doing it. And I stopped apologizing for that choice the moment I realized I was allowed to choose myself. One of the most isolating feelings was thinking I was the only one. But then I started paying attention. My best friend told me he'd been doing the exact same thing, pulling back, quieting down, saying no more often. He thought he was going crazy. My brother mentioned it at a family dinner, how he'd stopped answering group chats, how it felt like the first honest thing he'd done in years. And then I started seeing it everywhere. Men and women in their 50s and 60s, quietly stepping out of the constant performance, choosing depth over breadth, choosing peace over obligation. It's not talked about because it goes against everything we're taught. We're told that more is better. More friends, more connections, more engagement. We're sold the lie that loneliness is the enemy. But what if the real enemy is the exhaustion of pretending you want to be available to everyone? You're not alone in this, not even close. People keep asking me if I'm okay, if something happened, if I'm depressed, and I have to keep telling them the same thing. I'm not okay, I'm better. This isn't a depression, it's an awakening. This isn't isolation, it's intention. This isn't loneliness, it's finally peace. At 56, I've stopped performing, and that's the most alive I've felt in 20 years. When you're young, you think the goal is to be loved by as many people as possible. You think success is being popular. But that's a rigged game, because no matter how much you give, it's never enough. So at some point, if you're lucky, you realize you're playing the wrong game entirely. This chapter isn't about endings. It's about choosing. It's about saying no to everything that doesn't align with who you actually are. It's about discovering that you don't need everyone's approval because you've finally approved of yourself. I have my wife. I have my kids. I have a few real friendships. I have my own thoughts, my own time, my own peace. And I have discovered that's enough, more than enough. That's everything. If you're starting to feel that shift, if you're starting to realize that you don't have to keep running, that you're allowed to just exist in your own life without constantly giving pieces of yourself away, then maybe this is your chapter 2. If this resonated with you, if you're feeling something shift inside about how you want to spend your time and who deserves access to your voice, I want to hear about it. Leave a comment and tell me. Are you feeling this? Are you starting to pull back? What's been stopping you? And if you want more conversations about what happens when we finally choose ourselves over everyone else's expectations, subscribe to this channel. Because this chapter, the one where we stop talking to everyone and start actually living, it's just beginning, and you don't have to do it alone.